We continue the recruiting conversation here on a Thursday Locked On Vols. Will 2026 be the best class Josh Heupel has recruited? And let's look back at the quarterback class of 2023. Where does Nico stand in that loaded quarterback class a couple years later? That and more, it's Locked On Vols.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey everybody, welcome into Thursday Locked On Vols. I am Eric Kane, so happy to have you guys here along for the ride, making Locked On Vols your first listen, your first watch each and every single day. Everydayers couldn't do this show without you. You guys know it. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, and of course couldn't do it without our friends over at FanDuel Sportsbook, where new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed, win or lose. That's at FanDuel.com to get started today. Got a fun show coming up. I had planned to have Matt Ray on the show yesterday, but with the news of Amari Jefferson committing to Tennessee out of the transfer portal, thought I would just get a quick little snippet of him on Jefferson to play on yesterday's show, and then record a bigger segment on recruiting here for today. So Matt Ray is going to join us here for a little extended period in segments 1 and 2 to discuss Tennessee recruiting and what's going on in that world. And then in segment number 3, I've kind of teased this conversation. I think we've done it before a couple months ago, but I understand everybody wants perfection. Everybody wants immediate, wins and yards and stats and records and all that. And there's a long way to go. I mean, Nico Iamaliava has got to take a step this offseason and into his second year of starting his junior year sophomore year overall at Tennessee in 2025. But where does Nico stack up against some of the quarterbacks in that loaded class of 2023? I mean, it is right there at the top where he was rated by On3 and where he is a couple years later. It's pretty incredible, the wild journey that, class of destiny, if you will, for the quarterbacks in the class of 2023, where all those guys have ended up a couple years later. We're going to discuss that in segment number 3, all that and more coming up on a Thursday show. So without further ado, let's get into my conversation with Matt Ray, my colleague at Volquest.com. Well, let's continue to look at some of these young wide receivers in the room. Tennessee's obviously still looking for some more bodies in that room and some depth and all that, but Jefferson is a guy that can play a little all over, but primarily an outside guy in high school. Let's look at these incoming guys. Travis Smith, Rodarius Jackson, Joakim Dotson, who Dotson was a teammate of Jefferson at Baylor School. Where do these guys best fit as we're trying to look at, okay, well, you're going to pair these guys with Matthews and Brazel and Staley. Kind of where do these guys fit in terms of slot outside and all that?
Well, I think when you look at Rodarius Jackson and Travis Smith, those are two guys that are going to line up on the outside, 99% of the time. They're bigger physical type guys that are going to win, possession type balls down the field and at the sticks. Both really showcase that in high school with their ability to, win one-on-one situations against defenders. Travis Smith, it seemed like week in and week out in the state of Georgia was throwing up a lot of crooked numbers against some of the top secondaries, and not just Georgia, but in the country. And, he definitely is that vertically attacking deep threat guy, that Tennessee covets in their offense. Rodarius Jackson, I think, is unique to me. Seeing him play 7-on-7, it's very apparent what he can do as a wide receiver when he's just primarily focused there. A huge catch radius, has, some extremely large hands, which is what you want as a wide receiver. It makes catching the football, that much easier.
No Kenny Pickett hand size here.
No, absolutely not. He's a guy that played a lot of different positions out there at Sheffield and Memphis. So, as he continues to come along, the route tree continues to develop. It's going to be interesting to see what Tennessee, is able to do with him. But yeah, he's a guy that's also going to be able to go down the field and win. But when he goes across the middle, if that ball gets pretty close to his hands, he's a guy that typically catches the football. And so he's a possession type receiver, but he's dynamic. And he had a 99-yard interception return for a touchdown this year, had punt returns for touchdowns throughout his high school career, played quarterback, played defensive back, linebacker. I'm pretty sure the only thing he didn't do sometimes was snap the ball. So he's a guy that is really unique. I think it's going to be interesting to see his development and how he comes along. But you can clearly see why Tennessee is high on him and prioritized him so early in the recruiting cycle. And then Joakim Dotson, to me, is a guy that is going to line up and see time in the slot for Tennessee. He's a burner. First game of the year for Baylor. He housed, a long touchdown run against Raven Gap, who's turned into one of the premier teams in the country. And I've talked to Joe Kim a little bit about it before he signed. And he said that was kind of the coming out party for him. He was already committed to Tennessee, but he started to gain that attention on more of a national scale when he made that play on ESPN and he ran away from everyone. Multiple Power 4 guys in the secondary there for Raven Gap. So I think you see him line up in the slot in Tennessee, be pretty unique with him, but he lined up on the outside at Collierville. He moved around at Baylor. He's a guy that can do a lot, but I think you'll see him primarily hone in at the slot at Tennessee.
Yeah, like a big reason why I wanted to have you on the show some this week, and full disclosure, I was going to have you on to talk about all this, and then Amari Jefferson committed, so I was like, all right, well, let me get a little snippet for yesterday's show, and then we'll have our conversation about the bigger picture stuff here today. But it's one of those things where it's like, well, it's double-edged sword. Fans are upset that Tennessee's not been active in the portal. Fans are also upset that young guys, freshmen aren't playing, and I think that when push comes to shove, there's going to be a lot of young guys play in this receiver room. We'll see what Tennessee continues to do in the portal with wide receivers. I think they need to add at least one more, that likely two if they can swing it. But Travis Smith should play, and Amari Jefferson's going to play. And, of course, Mike Matthews is going to be the dog in that room along with Brazel and then Staley. This room, I know it's easier to, hindsight, to comment on hindsight after we've seen them, but what's your thoughts on the talent level in this room, wide receiver, which, seemingly is kind of starting over for the 2025?
Yeah, it's young. I mean, you're right about that. It's young, but it's talented. These are guys that Tennessee made a priority early on in each recruiting cycle. Obviously, Amari Jefferson didn't choose the Vols the first time around, and Nick Saban was very impactful in him choosing Alabama. It kind of took that recruitment, personally and led the charge there for the Crimson Tide with him coming out of high school. But he was a guy that Tennessee really coveted coming out of high school, and they recruited him all the way into the end, all the way until he signed with, at Baylor. He continued to have conversations with him throughout, and he's another guy that they're very familiar with, that they really liked coming out of high school. And I think, that's pretty key when you look at this group. If you trust your evaluations, you're right, Eric. I think young guys are going to play, and yeah, they're going to have to add a body at receiver, at least a body at receiver. We'll see what else they elect to do, but until a right body really goes in at receiver, you're not going to take a guy just to take him. I think when you value this young core that you have, and I think that's what we're seeing from Tennessee right now. One more scholarship receiver would kind of get them to where they were at in 2023, which would be one less body than they had scholarship wise, I think, in 2024. If I looked at those numbers right the other day. But you're going to see opportunities for these young guys, I think, this year, and that's something that we haven't seen yet. They've had a lot of upperclassmen out there run around, be it hurt, dinged up, whatever. Some of these guys are going to get a crash course, and they're going to have to be ready to go and contribute in the spring. So it's unique right now with this room, but there's a lot of young talent there.
Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions that you forgot about or that maybe you were paying for twice? That's definitely happened to me before. I had a few subscriptions I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, helps lower your bills so you can grow in your savings. It brings together everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals that you want to hit on this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all the app's premium features. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That is rocketmoney.com/lockedon. One more time, that is rocketmoney.com/lockedon. I want to get your thoughts on Tennessee's freshmen that just played in 2024. At the end of the season, I write all these, superlative stories and all that. And, some of them are super sophomores and breakout freshmen of the year, all that type of stuff. And, Mike Matthews, it was a saga there at the end of the transfer portal cycle. Huge for Tennessee to be able to retain him, no doubt. I think we both agree he should have been playing more and should have been a factor a lot earlier in the season. But what did you like from Mike Matthews, Peyton Lewis, and Boo Carter? Those are for me, kind of the trio of freshmen that led the way this year. I think Jordan Ross has got a bright future, and a lot of these other guys, don't get me wrong, but from Peyton Lewis to Matthews to Boo, what'd you like about their play here, year number one at the Power 4 level?
Yeah, I think you saw Peyton Lewis come along, this fall especially, arrived to campus and was sidelined there early with an injury that he had to get cleaned up from his senior season. So his development, I thought, come along. I thought that was encouraging. You saw him get some big, meaningful carries down the stretch with Deshaun Bishop out. Look back to Athens, Georgia. There was a drive there where it was a Peyton Lewis drive, and he carried the ball. I thought he didn't press too hard at times. I think he's going to be a guy that for Tennessee that you're really looking towards the future with at that running back position. Obviously now with Dylan Sampson gone, Cam Selden gone, I think the future's pretty bright for Peyton Lewis. He's a guy that can command the workload in between the tackles in the SEC with his frame, but he's got the breakaway speed that you need. With Boo Carter, I mean, man, to not be a 5-star and a guy that, in my opinion, coming out of high school was deserving of a higher rating than he had. You get it when you look at the projections and the things like that, but at some point, you're just talking about guys that can play football, and it was very apparent coming out of high school, be it on defense, be it on special teams or offense, that Boo Carter was a football player. And he showed that, I think, in year one. He made plays really from the jump. He played really well. You saw the moments where he was a freshman, and that's to be expected. There's not many of those, not many of these freshmen that go out there and don't have freshman moments. But I think overall for him, as he continued each week, you could see him playing with more and more and more confidence and continuing to make plays for Tennessee and, turn into a weapon as a return man, which I think is something that they needed and missed kind of early in the season. The future, again, another guy that's really bright. We'll see what Tennessee does with him. Sounds like he's going to play some offense at some point. Eric, we'll see what those, packages look like or how that's incorporated. But I think, if you're a Tennessee fan and you're following this, that has to be pretty exciting to see. And then, when Mike Matthews, it's no secret, I probably covered Mike Matthews more extensively than I did any recruit in 2025. And that's because early on it was, Tennessee really getting into that race and gaining some momentum, and the opportunities were there to see him. But, after seeing him, after he had committed to Tennessee, I saw him a couple of short weeks later at his first game in the Corky Kell Classic. And that offense at Parkview was not very good. It centered around trying to run the football and get Mike the football when you could. They struggled, at times. But they come along throughout the year. But during that week, Mike Matthews, guy ripped his helmet off because Mike was physical with him out on the edge, blocking on the perimeter. He didn't really get the chances this fall as a pass catcher in a lot of ways that you and I mentioned earlier. Thought he probably should have been involved a little bit more earlier. But I think you saw the physicality. I think you saw that piece from him as a freshman early on, the willingness to block when in the game, the willingness to do what, kind of be that teammate. And I think that's super important in this offense. It's not an offense that you're going to get the ball every single snap. There's going to be guys around you getting the ball. You got to be ready when your number's called. But to be able to block out on the edge and be physical, that's why Brew McCoy was so important to this offense during his time at Tennessee. It's what made Cedric Tillman, in my opinion, such a mismatch, was because what do you do with him? If you let him get up on you and block you, and the Tennessee hits you for a little quick screen, one man misses and Tillman's got his block sealed, it's off to the races. But if you don't really honor him, then he can run past you. That piece for me in this Tennessee offense is so huge. And I think that physicality piece is something that Mike Matthews brings to that outside receiver room. And it's going to be something that's going to have to, trickle down through these younger receivers. When you talk about physicality and those things, that's a lot of times the biggest piece to making the jump from high school to the next level. So I think, as you said, Mike Matthews is going to be the guy in that room along with Chris Brazel, and they're going to have to lead that piece and instill that in these young receivers from a teammate standpoint.
Yeah, the physicality aspect. I mean, that's why Cedric Tillman played early on in his career during the Jeremy Pruitt years. I remember making the jokes back in 19 and 2020 and all that. It's like, oh, well, Tillman's in the game. They're not going to throw him the football, but he's there to block. And certainly he, produced at such a high level when he came into his zone in this offense with Josh Heupel in 2021 and 2022. All right, let's look ahead to 2026, kind of out the door. I'm going to leave it kind of open-ended. There's a lot of names out there. I know Tennessee just got a commit, and Tyron Evans. You can comment on him as well. 2026, 7 commits already, third nationally, very early. Tennessee's in on a number of big-time prospects. Who are some of these names to know that are not already committed, and who should we maybe expect to see coming up on a junior day? What is it, January the 20th, I believe they're having a junior day?
January 18th will be a junior day for Tennessee, and I would look for them to probably have another one later in the month. We'll see what happens there, but looking to get some of their bigger targets back to campus there in the middle of the month. And, upcoming this weekend, Chattanooga, Baylor School. We've talked a lot about Baylor School here today with Amari Jefferson and Joakim Donson. Gabriel Osinda, offensive tackle, listed around 6'7", 310, 315 pounds, is set to make his announcement at the All-American Bowl in San Antonio. Tennessee very much in the thick of things there, with Florida trying to make a late push, but I think Tennessee's done a really good job with Gabriel Osinda throughout, and there's some really strong relationships. But yeah, Eric, 2026, Tennessee coaches are on the road right now. They're checking on a lot of top targets. Checked on in-state guys this week, and Craig Tutt, Zach Groves. We'll be seeing Carson Snead play basketball at some point this week. Tim Banks, Rodney Garner in Georgia, checking on guys throughout the week like Kamari Brooks, who's a really unique edge that can play tight end at the next level. Tennessee's continuing to keep really close tabs on Braden Rouse. He's a guy, if you've been over at Volquest, we've mentioned him a lot. Coming out of his junior season, his stock is up. It seems like every other day he's getting a Power 4 offer. Alabama, I think, probably most recently for him, but he's a guy that Tennessee honed in on early, got to campus multiple times, last year, looking to get him back later this month. So Tennessee's keeping close tabs on him, and we'll watch him play basketball, this week as well. There's a lot going on right now. It's a fun time to be following Tennessee recruiting again when these cycles kind of reset and new storylines emerge. But Tennessee's continuing to do well in the recruitment of a guy like Tristan Keys out of Mississippi, 5-star wide receiver. So they're continuing to work that receiver room and get those targets that they like. Obviously, they liked adding Tyron Evans, a long, athletic receiver that can run, and can really run. But as far as the junior days coming up, I think Tennessee's going to do, pretty well in getting guys that they want back to campus. We'll work to confirm more of those names later throughout the month. But yeah, it's a lot going on in 2026 right now. As the Vols are just continuing to push for a really strong class. As you said, ranked third nationally, I think, right now, with 7 commits, and Faison Brandon continues to do a really nice job of peer recruiting guys.
Matt Ray, a regular contributor here at Locked On Vols, but full-time job over there at VolQuest.com. Him and Austin do an awesome job. That's a tongue twister. So go read their work. Go check out all their notes on the Journalist Quarters and everything we've got going on over there at VolQuest.com. Matt, thanks so much for the overtime this week. I appreciate it as always, man.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Got a final segment left here on this Thursday morning edition of Locked On Vols. Can't thank you enough for being here, and really appreciate Matt Ray for joining the show and providing some insights on some of the young talent that's on Tennessee's roster, some of the young talent that performed in 2024, and what 2026 recruiting class is kind of shaping up to be. I think it's going to be a good one for Josh Heupel and the University of Tennessee. All right, so kind of speaking on recruiting, I thought I carried that theme over here for segment number 3, and I wanted to look back at that class of 2023, the quarterbacks. And I've been wanting to do this for a while, but CBS Sports actually put a story up there a couple of days ago on, Malachi Nelson and Jaden Rashada, 2 of those quarterbacks who are highly ranked in the class of 2023. How they stand as cautionary tales for ultra-hyped quarterbacks who fall into the transfer portal trap. So Malachi Nelson, of course, if you remember, he signed with Southern Cal following Lincoln Riley, wanted to be a part of that that quarterback program, that quarterback development factory, right? Well, he's about to join his 3rd school in 3 years. He left USC for Boise State thinking he'd have the starting quarterback job there. He missed out on the starting quarterback job there and was the backup quarterback for a college football playoff team. And now he entered the transfer portal and is committed to UTEP. So think about the journey that Malachi Nelson has been on. I'll get to this rating here in a moment. But, Malachi Nelson, he committed and signed with the program, USC, that is number 8 all-time in winning percentage. And he's going to UTEP, that among FBS programs that have played at least 25 seasons, only Kent State, Tennessee's played UTEP and Kent State both here lately, only Kent State ranks lower than UTEP. So CBS Sports kind of puts it this way. Simply put, Nelson is headed about as far away from USC as humanly possible in only 2 seasons after landing as a star recruit for the Trojans. I mean, that right there is a cautionary tale to begin with. What about Jaden Rashada, right? You remember Jaden Rashada? He was big-time quarterback prospect. He committed to Miami, reportedly huge NIL deal. Flips late in the process to Florida, reportedly a huge NIL deal. Signs with the Gators. We know that story. It didn't really pan out. Signs with the Gators. Gets out of his national letter of intent. Okay, he goes to Arizona State. While at Arizona State, I believe, or maybe that was another offseason, he goes back and says, hey, I'm going to sue Billy Napier and the Florida Gators and their collective, and one of the boosters that was involved in that regard. So committed to Miami, flipped, committed to Florida, signed with Florida, got out of his NLI, signed with Arizona State, okay? I played a little bit this year, played a little bit in 2023, I guess, got hurt, dealt with an injury, transfers out of Arizona State, goes to Georgia, trying to compete for the backup job, backing up Carson Beck with Gunnar Stockton, loses that backup quarterback job, obviously, and Gunnar Stockton, played in the playoffs and in the back half of the SEC championship game. And knowing that Gunnar Stockton was going to be the guy for the Bulldogs in 2025, Jaden Rashada has once again entered the transfer portal for the third time in his career. Think about this. Arizona State, again, since Rashada left, they had to go out and find a transfer quarterback, and Arizona State was in the college football playoffs this year. So I think those 2 quarterbacks are perfect for this story in terms of cautionary tales on quarterbacks falling in the transfer portal trap. But much less, it just goes to show you that it's so much more than just recruiting. It's so much more than just stars. Yeah, I think stars are important. Look at Ohio State. That roster is littered with 5 stars. But what's even more important than getting highly rated star athletes out of the high school ranks, it's development. You have got to develop these guys. Got to play them early now. I recognize that, but you got to develop these guys. Development is key in turning any program around or any program reaching that next level. Now, here's to say that not all quarterbacks are, not all quarterbacks who transfer are in a bad boat or in a bad position. Some other ones that transferred that are not in a very good spot. Nick Evers, number 8 quarterback in that class of 2022. Malik Murphy's on his third team. There's been some other ones there as well. Miller Moss, Caleb Williams. It worked out pretty well for Caleb Williams for sure. But not all quarterbacks who transfer are in this boat. Some, it's been really, really good. In fact, of the 4 college football playoff semifinal teams, and the semifinals getting set to kick off tonight, Quinn Ewers, okay, Texas, Will Howard, Ohio State, Riley Leonard of Notre Dame. You had Ewers from Texas, Ohio State to Texas, Howard from TCU to, or not TCU, sorry, it was Kansas State, right? Kansas State to Ohio State, and Leonard from Duke to Notre Dame. All those quarterbacks did pretty well. Dylan Gabriel, who was QB1 at Oregon this year, of course, he had a couple different stops. Started at UCF with, Josh Heupel, went to Oklahoma, and then is in Oregon where he capped his collegiate career. So again, there's different sides of the stories. Not all fit into one category, but I do think it's interesting when we go back and look at the class of 2023. Oh my goodness. So according to the On3 rankings, not the On3 industry rankings that weights On3 and 247, both at like 35%, Rivals at 20%, I think, and then like ESPN like like 5 or 10%, whatever that comes out to be 100. Not those. This is the On3 specific rankings. Nico Iamaliava was, of course, the number 1 overall player in the class and the number 1 quarterback. Arch Manning was the number 3 overall prospect, the number 2 quarterback. Those 2 quarterbacks probably leading the pack in this class that we're gonna dive into. Nico, of course, 1-year starter, redshirt in 2023. First-year starter, had some highs, had some lows, got a lot of room to grow. It's got to take a step. We know all this. He was far from perfect, but, all things considered, when you stack him up against some of these other guys, not so bad. Arch Manning, I think Arch Manning's going to be pretty good. Not going to be honest with you, I thought he was super overhyped in the recruiting process. But what we've seen from him in package roles and limited roles, I think he's going to be pretty good, right? He's staying at Texas, of course. He's going to be the guy in 2025. But Arch Manning there at number 2. Jackson Arnold was the 3rd-ranked quarterback, 6th overall prospect in the country. We know how that former 5-star story has been told so far. Didn't make it at Oklahoma. Also, I think the coaches were very premature in benching him for sure, but didn't make it at Oklahoma. He is now, it was in and out of the starting lineup for the Sooners. Now he's at Auburn, transferred this offseason. Dante Moore, a guy that we haven't really even brought up yet. Dante Moore started his career at UCLA, transferred to Oregon, primarily to back up Dylan Gabriel, and he's going to get the keys to the to the castle there in 2025. But he's on his second school after committing to UCLA after being, according to On3, the 20th overall prospect, 4th quarterback at his position. We mentioned Malachi Nelson, how he signed with USC, transferred to Boise State, and is now heading to Utah. Malachi Nelson, number 30 overall, number 5 at his position. What a tell that was. Then, they redo these rankings a little bit. So actually, Jaden Rashada fell well down. He was one of the top 5 quarterbacks at one time in this class. But where they ended these rankings for the class of 2023, Jaden Rashada was at 177 and the 15th overall quarterback. Again, he was top 5, way back when. But oh my goodness. I mean, again, committed to Miami, flipped to Florida, signed with Florida, transferred to Arizona, or got out of his NLI, went to Arizona State, played a little bit, got hurt, transferred to Georgia, lost the backup quarterback job, and is now in the portal once again. Man, if that's not a cautionary tale, I don't know what to tell you. Sam Levitt, who of course started his career at Michigan State, transferred to Arizona State, and he's doing pretty good right now. Lenora Sellers was in that conversation. He, of course, has stayed at South Carolina the entire time. I'm trying to look at some other notables. Eli Holstein, Alabama reserve. He was the 11th ranked quarterback in this class. Christopher Vezina, I remember him. Tennessee recruited him a little bit. He's pretty much been the backup to Kay Klubnik throughout his career. He's still at Clemson as far as I know, unless he entered the transfer portal. He was the 14th ranked quarterback in this class. Avery Johnson was in this class. He was the 18th ranked quarterback. Trying to find some notables here. Blake Glenn, who signed with Florida State, he was pressed into action there at the end of the 2023 season. Marcel Reed was all the way down here at number 33 at his position. He was a 3-star prospect out of Nashville, of course, where he attended MBA, and I think he's done pretty well at Texas A&M for sure. But he was quarterback ranked number 33 in the class. So any way you want to spin it, we can play this game all day, and we can go back and do this for all the classes. You look at that quarterback class of destiny, if you will. Not so bad, man. Nico, again, I'm not trying to say he's the right because he is not. He's got to get better. But Nico, signing with Tennessee, redshirting, developing, getting his first taste of the action in 2024 in terms of a starter, knowing he's got his limitations, knowing he's got to break through those. Nico leads the pack easily in this class in terms of star-ranked quarterbacks and best quarterbacks, and it's not even close. So I like to reference the quarterback class of 2023 a lot, because I think the On3 rankings have got them right so far. I really, really do. Now, these are all great players, or these are all players who have great and high upsides. They've got to reach them with Jackson Arnold and Malachi Nelson and Dante Moore and Jaden Rashada, of course, Arch Manning and Nico Iamaliava. But I thought that was kind of interesting. I wanted to bring that on the show and kind of discuss that, following our conversation with Matt Ray, because man, it's kind of hard to believe. You go back and look at that quarterback class and how many guys have transferred or who have been on the move. And you look at Arch Manning, who was stuck with Texas through a couple of years of being a backup. You look at Nico, who backed up Joe Milton his first season and then got the keys in 2024. Those two guys certainly have been leading the pack. All right, got a fun show coming up tomorrow. Really, really looking forward to tomorrow's breakdown here on Locked On Vols of whatever's going on in the sports world. And I can't wait to have you guys back here with me. Thanks so much for making Locked On Vols your first listen, your first watch each and every single day. Tell your friends, tell your neighbors. We're going to continue talking Tennessee football. We'll talk Tennessee basketball. What a tough showing. I was planning on doing a reactionary mini pod after the Tennessee-Florida game, but the way that game went, I was just like, you know what, guys? I'm not going to talk about that. I'm sorry. It was horrible. But Tennessee basketball will bounce back. It's still a very, very good team. Will not be ranked number 1 next week, but that's okay. And we'll continue to talk Tennessee basketball throughout the season with baseball starting up here in a couple of weeks. All that and more right here on Locked On Vols. We'll see you on Friday, everybody.